Welcome back to English at Work. I'm Jenny.
And I'm Alex. This is episode 8, the final episode of our English for Meetings series.
Over the past 7 episodes, we've covered everything from meeting basics to presentations to handling conflict. But there's one crucial step that determines whether meetings actually accomplish anything.
The follow-up. What happens after the meeting ends is just as important as what happens during it.
Because here's the truth. Meetings without follow-up are just conversations. They don't create change, they don't drive results, and they waste everyone's time.
Today, we're covering how to take effective notes, write clear meeting minutes, track action items, hold people accountable, and ensure that decisions actually lead to action.
These are the unsexy but essential skills that separate productive professionals from people who just talk a lot.
By the end of this episode, you'll have systems for making sure your meetings create real results, not just consumed time.
Let's finish this series strong. Let's start with note-taking during the meeting itself. Alex, what's the purpose of taking notes?
To capture what matters. Not to transcribe every word, but to record key decisions, action items, important points, and things you need to remember or follow up on.
So what should you write down?
5 main things: decisions that were made, action items and who's responsible, important data or facts, questions that need answers, and key discussion points.
Let's break those down. Starting with decisions, why is this critical?
Because people's memories differ. In a week, 2 people might remember completely different outcomes. Written notes create a single source of truth.
Give me an example of a well-recorded decision.
Decision. We'll launch the beta version on March 15th rather than April 1st, agreed by Sarah, Michael, and Tom.
So you're noting what was decided and who agreed.
Exactly. This prevents future disputes about what was actually decided.
What about action items?
This is the most important thing to capture. Every action item needs 3 elements: what needs to be done, who's doing it, and when it's due.
Give me an example.
Bad note. Someone should update the client. Good note. Sarah will send client update email by Friday, March 8th.
The difference is specificity?
Yes, vague notes lead to nothing getting done. Specific notes create accountability.
What about important data or facts?
Numbers, statistics, key findings, things you'll need to reference later. Q4 revenue was 2.3 M, up 15% from Q3.
Should you write down everything that's said?
No, that's impossible and unnecessary. Focus on substance, not every word.
What about questions that come up but aren't answered?
Definitely note those. Question for the IT team: can the system handle 10,000 concurrent users? This ensures the question doesn't get lost.
Now let's talk about methods. Should you take notes by hand or on a computer?
Both work. Handwritten notes can be faster during the meeting, and there's research showing you retain more, but typed notes are easier to share and search later.
What do you recommend?
For the official note-taker creating minutes, type them. For personal notes, whatever works for you.
What about recording meetings, audio or video?
Can be helpful as a backup, but never rely solely on recordings. You still need written notes. Plus, recordings take time to review.
Should you always ask permission before recording?
Absolutely. In some places, it's legally required. Always say, "I'd like to record this for my notes. Any objections?"
What if you're taking notes and also trying to participate?
This is challenging. You can't do both perfectly. If you're the official note-taker, your main job is capturing information. Your participation should be secondary.
What if you miss something while taking notes?
Ask for clarification. "Sorry, could you repeat that decision? I want to make sure I have it correctly." People appreciate accuracy.
How detailed should notes be?
Detailed enough to be useful later, concise enough to be readable. Use bullet points, not paragraphs. Use abbreviations you'll remember.
What about organizing notes?
Follow the agenda structure if there is one, or use categories: decisions, action items, discussion points, questions, next steps.
Should you clean up your notes immediately after the meeting?
Yes, do it while everything is fresh in your mind, within an hour if possible. Notes you can't decipher a week later are useless.
What if you're in back-to-back meetings all day?
Build in 10 to 15 minutes between meetings to review and clean up notes. Don't schedule yourself so tightly you can't process.
Now let's talk about formal meeting minutes, the official record of what happened.
Who writes meeting minutes?
Usually the meeting organizer, an administrative assistant, or a designated note-taker. It should be clear before the meeting who has this responsibility.
What's the purpose of meeting minutes?
To create a permanent record of the meeting for people who attended and for anyone who needs to know what happened but couldn't attend.
So, what should be included in meeting minutes?
Basic information first: meeting date, time, location or virtual, attendees and absentees if relevant, then the substance.
What substance?
Key discussion points organized by agenda item, all decisions made, all action items with owners and deadlines, important data or findings shared, and next steps including date of next meeting if applicable.
What should not be included?
Verbatim conversation, personal opinions, off-topic discussion, or potentially sensitive comments. Meeting minutes should be factual and professional.
How long should meeting minutes be?
As concise as possible while still being complete. For a 1-hour meeting, maybe 1 to 2 pages. If your minutes are 5 pages, they're too long.
Can you give me a structure or template?
Sure, here's a simple one. Meeting minutes. Project, marketing campaign review. Date, March 5th, 2024. Time, 2 to 3 p.m. Location, Conference Room B/Zoom. Attendees, Sarah Johnson, Michael Chen, Amy Park, and David Williams. Absentees, Tom Garcia, sick. Agenda Item 1, Q1 campaign results. Sarah presented results showing 25% increase in leads. Cost per lead decreased from $50 to $38. Discussion of what strategies were most effective. Decisions. Approved budget increase of $20K for Q2 campaign. Will continue Instagram focus, reduce Facebook spend. Action items. Sarah, create detailed Q2 campaign plan by March 15th. Michael, analyze competitor campaigns by March 12th. Amy, set up meeting with the creative team by March 10th. Next steps. Next meeting, March 22nd, 2 p.m. Sarah will send Q2 plan for review before meeting. See how this is clear, organized, and scannable?
Very. It's not trying to capture every word, just the important outcomes.
Exactly. You want someone to be able to read this in 2 to 3 minutes and understand what happened and what needs to happen next.
What about tone and language in meeting minutes?
Professional and objective. Use past tense. The team decided, not the team decides. Be factual, not emotional.
Should you include disagreements or conflicts?
You can note that different perspectives were discussed, but don't turn it into a transcript of the argument. Multiple approaches were considered before the team agreed on option B.
What about attributing comments to specific people?
For decisions and action items, yes. For general discussion points, usually not necessary. Sarah presented Q1 results, but not, Michael said he thought the numbers were interesting.
How quickly should you distribute meeting minutes?
Within 24 hours, ideally the same day. The sooner people have them, the sooner they can act on action items.
Who should receive the meeting minutes?
Everyone who attended, anyone who was supposed to attend but couldn't, and anyone else who needs to know what was discussed, like managers or stakeholders.
Should you ask people to review for accuracy?
You can. Please review and let me know if I missed anything or got something wrong, but set a deadline. Reply within 24 hours if you have corrections.
What if someone disputes what you wrote?
If it's a factual error, correct it immediately. If it's a matter of interpretation, discuss with the meeting leader to determine the accurate version.
Should you save meeting minutes long-term?
Yes, create a shared folder where all meeting minutes are stored. They become valuable reference documents.
Should you use a set format?
Whatever your organization uses. Often shared documents, Google Docs, SharePoint, Confluence work well because they're accessible and searchable.
Any final tips on meeting minutes?
Be consistent. Use the same template every time. It makes them easier to write and easier to read. And don't let perfection be the enemy of good. Done is better than perfect.
Now, let's talk about action items, the actual work that needs to happen after the meeting.
This is where most meetings fail. Lots of discussion, lots of decisions, but then nothing actually gets done.
So how do you make sure action items actually happen?
First, they need to be clearly assigned during the meeting. We talked about this in episode 3. Sarah, you'll handle this, not someone should do this.
And people need to verbally agree?
Yes, get confirmation. Sarah, can you get that done by Friday? Yes. If someone says they can't meet a deadline, negotiate it in the meeting.
What happens after the meeting?
The person responsible needs to actually do the work, but the meeting owner or project manager should track progress.
How do you track action items?
Several methods. Simple spreadsheet with columns, action item, owner, due date, status, or use project management tools like Asana, Trello, or Monday.
What should be in the status column?
Not started, in progress, completed. Keep it simple.
How often should you check in on action items?
Depends on urgency. For a week-long deadline, maybe check in at the midpoint. For longer projects, weekly check-ins.
How do you check in without micromanaging?
Keep it light. Hey Sarah, just wanted to check. How's the campaign plan coming along? On track for Friday? Not, why haven't you finished this yet?
What if someone is behind schedule?
Ask what they need. What's blocking you? How can I help? Maybe they need resources, clarification, or the deadline needs to move.
Should you announce to the whole team that someone is behind?
No, that's embarrassing. Handle it privately. Public accountability, yes. Public shaming, no.
What if someone consistently doesn't follow through?
That's a performance issue that needs to be addressed with their manager. But first, try to understand why. Are the deadlines unrealistic? Do they have too much on their plate?
What about your own action items? How do you stay on top of those?
Add them to your task management system immediately after the meeting. Put deadlines in your calendar with reminders a few days before.
What if you realize you can't meet a deadline you committed to?
Communicate early. Don't wait until the day it's due. I know I said Friday, but I've run into some issues. Can we push to Monday?
Is that okay to do?
Occasionally, yes, life happens. Just don't make it a habit and communicate proactively, not at the last minute.
What about action items that fall through the cracks?
This happens when tracking is poor. That's why you need a system. Review your action items daily or at least weekly.
Should action items be reviewed at the start of the next meeting?
Absolutely. Start each recurring meeting by reviewing action items from last time. Sarah, you were going to create the campaign plan. Can you share an update?
What if they didn't do it?
They need to explain why and commit to a new deadline in front of the group. Peer accountability is powerful.
What about celebrating completed action items?
Yes, acknowledge when people follow through. Great job getting that done on time, Sarah. Recognition motivates people.
Any tools you particularly recommend for tracking action items?
For simple tracking, a shared spreadsheet works fine. For more complex projects, Asana or similar tools are great. Use whatever your team will actually use.
What's the biggest mistake people make with action items?
Not writing them down clearly at all, or writing them down but never checking on them. Action items without follow-up are just wishes.
Now let's talk about communication after meetings, keeping people informed who weren't there but need to know what happened.
Who are stakeholders in this context?
Anyone affected by the meeting outcomes who wasn't present. Your boss, team members who couldn't attend, other departments, clients sometimes.
How do you decide who needs to be informed?
Ask yourself, who needs to know about these decisions? Whose work will be affected? Who asked to be kept in the loop?
Should you send full meeting minutes to everyone?
Not always. Sometimes a summary email is better. Quick update from today's marketing meeting. We decided X, Y is handling Z by next Friday.
When would you send full minutes versus a summary?
Full minutes to core team members, summaries to peripheral stakeholders. Customized based on what each person needs to know.
How do you write a good summary email?
Keep it brief, a few bullet points maximum. Lead with the most important information. Include any action items that involve the recipient.
Give me an example.
Subject, quick update, marketing meeting 3-5. Hi team, quick update from today's campaign review. Q1 results exceeded targets by 25%, budget approved for expanded Q2 campaign. Sarah is creating Q2 plan by March 15th. Next meeting, March 22 at 2 p.m. Let me know if you have questions. See how this is scannable and action-oriented?
Very clear. What about timing? When should you send updates?
Same day as the meeting if possible, while it's fresh. Don't let it sit for 3 days.
What if decisions from the meeting affect someone's work immediately?
Contact them directly, don't just rely on them seeing an email. Hey, wanted to let you know we decided to move the launch date up. Does this impact your timeline?
What about escalating issues that came up in meetings?
If something needs senior leadership attention, don't bury it in meeting minutes. Send a separate, clear email or schedule a brief conversation.
How do you escalate without being alarmist?
Be factual. In today's meeting, we identified a risk to the timeline. The vendor can't deliver by our deadline. We need to decide whether to push the launch or find an alternative vendor.
What about communicating setbacks or problems?
Do it quickly and with a proposed solution. The budget came in higher than expected. Here are 3 options to address it. Don't just dump problems without solutions.
What if you need approval for something decided in the meeting?
Make that clear and easy to action. The team recommends option B. Can you approve by COB Thursday? Give a clear deadline and make it easy to say yes or no.
Should you follow up if you don't get a response?
Yes, if something is time-sensitive and you haven't heard back, follow up politely. Just checking if you had a chance to review. I need to know by tomorrow to keep us on schedule.
Let's talk about using meetings as learning opportunities. How do you get better at meetings over time?
By reflecting on what works and what doesn't. After important meetings, take 5 minutes to think about what went well and what you'd do differently.
Should you actually write this down?
For big meetings, yes. Create a simple retrospective. What worked, what didn't, what to change next time.
Can you give an example?
What worked? Clear agenda sent in advance, everyone came prepared. What didn't work? Ran 20 minutes over, didn't get to last agenda item. Next time, allocate time more realistically or reduce agenda items.
Should you ask for feedback from participants?
For recurring meetings or important presentations, yes. How could I make these meetings more useful for you?
Do people actually give honest feedback?
If you ask genuinely and don't get defensive, yes. You might do a quick anonymous survey for sensitive feedback.
What questions should you ask?
Was this meeting valuable for you? What could be improved? Did we use time effectively? What should we start, stop, or continue doing?
What about observing great meeting leaders?
Excellent learning strategy. Pay attention to how skilled facilitators manage discussion, handle conflict, keep time, drive to decisions.
Should you ask them for tips?
Most people are flattered to be asked. I really admire how you run meetings. Any advice for someone trying to improve?
What about your own performance as a participant?
Reflect on that too. Did I contribute meaningfully? Was I prepared? Did I listen well? Did I dominate or stay too quiet?
How do you know if you're improving?
Track it over time. Are your meetings ending on time more often? Are people more engaged? Are action items getting completed? Are you getting positive feedback?
What about meeting effectiveness for the whole team?
You can track metrics. What percentage of meetings start on time? What percentage of action items get completed? How much time is spent in meetings overall?
Should you ever cancel standing meetings?
Yes. If a recurring meeting is no longer serving a purpose, cancel it. I'm thinking we don't need our weekly meeting anymore since we're using Slack effectively. Thoughts?
People would probably love that.
Most people are in too many meetings. Canceling unnecessary ones is a gift to everyone.
What about meeting-free days?
Some companies implement no meeting Wednesdays or similar. This gives people uninterrupted time for deep work.
Does that actually work?
If leadership commits to it, yes, but if the rule is ignored, it becomes meaningless.
Any final advice on continuous improvement?
Meetings are a skill. Like any skill, you get better with practice and feedback. Be patient with yourself and keep learning.
What's one thing everyone could do to immediately improve their meeting follow-up?
Send a summary of action items within 24 hours of every meeting. Just that one habit would transform most people's meeting effectiveness.
We've reached the end of our 8-episode series on English for meetings. Let's recap this final episode on follow-up.
Take effective notes during meetings. Capture decisions, action items with owners and deadlines, important data, unanswered questions, and key discussion points. Use whatever method works for you, but be consistent.
Write clear meeting minutes. Include date, attendees, decisions, action items, and next steps. Keep them concise and factual. Distribute within 24 hours. Use a template for consistency.
Follow up on action items systematically. Track them in a spreadsheet or project tool. Check in proactively without micromanaging. Communicate early if you can't meet a deadline. And review action items at the start of each meeting.
Keep stakeholders informed. Send summaries to people who need to know but weren't there. Escalate issues quickly with proposed solutions, and make it easy for people to approve decisions.
Continuously improve. Reflect on what works and what doesn't. Ask for feedback. Observe skilled facilitators. Cancel meetings that no longer serve a purpose, and track improvement over time.
And that brings us to the end of our entire series. Let's recap all 8 episodes briefly.
Episode 1, Meeting Basics and Types. Episode 2, Speaking Up and Contributing. Episode 3, Leading and Facilitating. Episode 4, Virtual Meetings. Episode 5, Presentations. Episode 6, Difficult Situations. Episode 7, Small Talk and Rapport. Episode 8, Follow-Up.
We've covered a lot of ground, but remember, you don't have to master everything at once.
Pick one skill from each episode and focus on improving that. Maybe it's arriving prepared, asking better questions, managing time better, or following up consistently.
Small improvements compound over time. A year from now, your meeting skills can be dramatically better.
And better meeting skills will accelerate your career. People notice who runs effective meetings, who contributes meaningfully, who follows through.
Thank you for joining us for this entire series. We hope it's been valuable.
If you want to learn more or practice these skills, check out our website at englishatwork.com for additional resources.
This has been Jenny
And Alex from English at Work. Now go run some amazing meetings.